Good morning, everybody. It's 7 o'clock in the UK. Very welcome to spend your breakfast with us here at Sky News this morning. The government's all fired up with a promise of an agreement to cut the global use of coal, but some of the nations who burn the most aren't yet on board. Meanwhile, at Westminster, temperatures are rising in the row over Conservative MPs voting to protect their colleague, Owen Paterson, from being suspended. Plenty to ask the Business Secretary, Kwasi Kwarteng, about in just a few moments. Also this morning for you, the Prime Minister of the beautiful South Pacific microstate of Tuvalu tells us how climate change is devastating his country. And in addition to that, the woman who's seen the world through the windows of the International Space Station and now fights to protect the planet. The former NASA astronaut Nicole Stott will be with us on the programme. It's Thursday, the 4th of November. The heat is on. The government claims it's secured a new agreement to phase out coal, but some of the biggest producing countries haven't yet signed up.
Australia is one of the biggest mining nations on Earth, but it doesn't appear keen to reduce the amount of coal it produces.
And I'm here in India, a country that relies on coal to keep the lights on, where there is no clear plan or commitment to phase it out anytime soon.
Cries of corruption, growing anger after Conservative MPs vote to protect the former Cabinet Minister Owen Paterson from being suspended. Scientists warn COVID rates in England are now amongst the highest levels ever recorded. And after 12 years of record lows, could interest rates be on the way up today? Morning on day 5 of the COP26 summit in Glasgow. The government is unveiling what it calls a milestone agreement to phase out coal power. But there's concern that some of the biggest mining nations and coal-burning countries aren't part of the deal. 190 countries and organisations have agreed to the phasing out of coal power and the end of support for new coal power plants. An end to all investment in new coal power generation, both domestically and internationally, to rapidly increase the use of clean power, and a plan to phase out coal power for the world's major economies in the 2030s, with the rest of the world to follow by the 2040s. Lots to talk about then. From Glasgow, the Business Secretary, Kwasi Kwarteng, is with us this morning. Mr Kwarteng, thank you very much indeed for joining us on the programme this morning. I mean, this looks fantastic in theory, but not everybody signed up to it, including some of the major users of coal. How long is that going to take?
I think it means that we've made huge progress on this subject. Only last year we said that we weren't going to invest in overseas coal mining. This year, as you say, just today, we will unveil the fact that about 190 countries and organisations are going to be signed up to phasing out coal. And across the world, people realise that coal is going to be a thing of the past. We're consigning coal to history. So I think it's a really impressive step.
Yeah, but China and US not signed up, is that right?
Well, we're working with Chinese negotiators, as well as the United States. And of course, you know that the United States, certainly under President Biden, is taking its climate commitments extremely seriously. And even in China, they've announced that they're not going to be investing in overseas coal mining. So that's a big step. Obviously, we want to go further, but I don't think we should play down the significance of today's announcements.
OK, what's going to happen to the new Whitehaven coal mine?
That, as I always say, is a planning issue. It's not something which I can determine as a Secretary of State, and it's going to be reviewed. It is being reviewed by the relevant planning authority.
Yeah, but if we're saying the end of coal is in sight, obviously we don't want to work in more coal mines, do we?
No, but we've had a huge success in moving away from coal, really only in the last 10 years. In 2012, 40% of our electricity was from coal. Today, it's only 1%. And as far as that particular coal mine is concerned, as I've said, that's something which is part of an independent planning process.
Yeah, but you appreciate that if we're saying that the end of coal is in sight, which is a quote that we're using this morning, what the government's saying, and then talking about opening a new coal mine, I mean, the juxtaposition of those two is not going to sit comfortably with my viewers this morning, is it?
No, I understand your point, but as I keep saying, as far as the coal mine in Cumbria was concerned, that was a process that was started some years ago, and at the moment it's something that's an independent planning decision, and it would not be right for me as a minister to comment on the rights and wrongs of it.
Don't see why not.
Well, it's an independent process. So what happens is that you have people like me, ministers making political policy calls, and then if you have a planning situation, it often goes through the relevant planning authority, and if there's an appeal, that is an independent process. And at the moment, it's currently being investigated. So it wouldn't be right for me to say one way or the other what I think is going to happen.
OK. So the government abides by independent process. A Tory MP is paid £500,000 by two companies to lobby on their behalf. He's found guilty because it's against the rules. He's suspended from Parliament for 30 days. The ruling Conservative Party, you guys, vote to change the rules. Why?
So it wasn't, it's not about the rights and wrongs of what Owen Paterson said or did or how he was paid. I think the process is something that we want to look at. The fact is he had no right of appeal, and we feel that in terms of Parliament, people should have a right of appeal, as they do in most employments throughout this country. So as far as I know, because I've been here all week, as you appreciate, but as far as I know, and I've read the issue about the issue and been told about it, the vote yesterday was all about, getting a proper process and getting some sort of right of appeal that MPs of all parties can rely on in a case like this. It's not about the rights and wrongs of what Owen did or didn't do. It's about trying to get. It's about trying to get. No, it isn't. It's about the Andrew. I mean, I read what Andrew Leadsome's amendment was about, and that was all about, setting up a committee and setting up a right of appeal process in a case like this. I don't think it was particularly related to what Owen said or did.
Of course it is. He took £500,000 to lobby on behalf of two companies which are against the rules. As a result, the independent body, which you say you abide by independent thought, has decided that he has to be suspended for 30 days. £500,000. People are struggling to feed their kids. He takes £500,000 and you move the goalposts.
So as I said, Kay, it's the vote yesterday, and I wasn't there, but I've read about it. The vote yesterday,
exactly
you're closer to it than you're closer to it than I am, frankly.
Oh, stop it. Stop it.
I mean, I'm in Glasgow.
Geographically, I might be closer, but you know exactly what's going on. That's duplicitous to say that, Minister. Come on.
No, it's not. No. I mean, looking at what happened yesterday, and I read the motion and I saw bits of the debate, it was all about the process. The vote was about getting a system of fairness back into almost what might be a kind of employment tribunal. I mean, my department looks after employment tribunal, looks after workers' rights, and throughout this country, any employee would have a right of appeal. This is something that Owen didn't have, and we're trying to get that back into the parliamentary process. I'm not here to comment on what he did or how much money he was making or anything like that. I think there was an issue with the process. I think the system had broken down, and we want to reform it.
Have you ever taken money for promoting a company's products?
No, I haven't. I'm a minister, so...
Why would you not?
Well, I'm a minister in the government, so there are rules against...
Just to clarify, if the government are so concerned about standards process, why is it changing the rules 90 minutes before, on the very day that one of your colleagues is being suspended? If you were so offended by the system, why was it not changed before now?
So, Kay, I mean, you'll appreciate, I'm sure, that we've been talking about this for years. We've been talking about holding MPs to account, having the highest standards in public life, ways in which we can improve those standards and make people more accountable. We've been talking about these sorts of things for many years now. And it so happens that yesterday we passed a vote, narrow vote, I think, in favour of actually trying to get a more rigorous process where people could have a right of appeal, and that's what my understanding of what happened yesterday in Parliament was all about.
Completely coincidental that it was the same day that Owen Paterson was going to be suspended for 30 days for breaching the rules. It's a dark day for democracy, says Chris Bryant. 50 Conservative MPs agree, and they defy the three-line whip, explaining to my viewers a three-line whip is basically when you are told that this is what you have to do. 50 Conservative MPs said, I'm sorry, we're not having that. How can you defend the government on this one?
Well, just on that, I mean, 50 MPs were out, but I was one of them. So many people were doing other things. They were doing government business. Lots of people here at this World Conference. So it doesn't mean that because 50 people didn't vote yesterday.
Were you paired with a Labour? Why did you not vote? Just explain that to our viewers.
Because I'm in Glasgow.
And were you paired with a Labour MP?
I wasn't.
That negated it.
Paired. I wasn't paired.
Okay.
I wasn't paired. I was slipped. So I was essentially been here all week.
You're getting into all the technicalities now, and frankly, my viewers really don't care at all. What they care about is that the government was telling MPs which way they had to vote, and your Tory MPs were saying absolutely not. This is totally unacceptable. And in fact, when the result came through, many of them were shouting shame. Do you feel shame this morning?
I don't feel shame at all. I didn't see the vote coming in, but it was an independent process. It was an independent vote at Parliament. And I'm really interested in seeing the system reformed and made more just and fair by allowing people a right of appeal.
Not independent of its whip, though, is it?
Look, I don't know about the whipping arrangement.
Is it?
Kay, you've said you didn't want to talk about
Is it an independent vote or not? It's not an independent vote if it's whipped, so it's not independent, is it?
Well, as you said, lots of people didn't vote. Lots of people, a number of people voted against the government, and it was an express will of Parliament.
We're getting down in the weeds, aren't we, here? The point is, this guy took £500,000 for lobbying people. He shouldn't have done it. He was told that he had to be suspended for 30 days. You moved the goalposts so he didn't have to. My viewers watching this morning will think, sleaze, 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 sleaze.
They may do, but I don't think it's about that at all. I think it's about trying to make sure that someone who's been accused of something has a right of appeal.
OK, new committee is what's being set up. Labour and the SNP on the previous committee so outraged as saying that they're not going to sit on this committee. It's just not something that they want to do. It's not the right way for democracy going forward. You're still going to go ahead with the committee?
I think we want. I mean, that was what was expressed in the vote yesterday.
You seem very
I think there'll be
this morning, I have to say.
What? No, I think there was a vote yesterday. The House of Commons made its will expressed, and we feel that there needs to be a right of appeal for any MP from any party that was in the same situation who's been accused of really quite serious wrongdoing.
Oh, it is serious wrongdoing.
Yeah, but we've established that this is not about what he did or didn't do. It's about trying to get a fair process.
As far as the public's concerned, it's about what he did and didn't do. He took £500,000 in order to influence the government, basically. That's what he did. And the Independent Commission said that's not acceptable. That's what my viewers are interested in this morning. Further, he then goes on to say, I'd do it again.
Owen Paterson has a right, as anyone else does in any employment, to appeal against a sentence or any kind of judgment. In this instance, he didn't have that right of appeal. The vote yesterday was all about trying to get a fairer system in place.
He said that the Commissioner should resign. Do you think she should?
I think it's difficult to see what the future of the Commissioner is, given the fact that we're reviewing the process and we're overturning and trying to reform this whole process. But it's up to the Commissioner to decide her position.
So you think she should resign?
All I've said is that we're trying to reform the process, and I think that's what I'm very focused on as a parliamentarian.
You think she should review her position, I think is what you said.
It's up to her to do that. I mean, it's up to anyone where they've made a judgment and people have sought to change that, to consider their position. That's a natural thing, but I'm not saying she should resign. Just
before I let you go, what would you say to my viewers this morning who say, Tories with their noses in the trough again?
I would say that in their employment, in their workplace, if they were accused of anything, they would expect a fair hearing, and also they would expect a right of appeal. And that all we're trying to do is to bring that into...
Are you saying it wasn't a fair hearing?
Westminster.
Are you saying it wasn't a fair hearing?
I'm saying that you would have a right of appeal, even if it was a fair hearing.
They're entitled to a fair hearing. Are you saying it wasn't a fair hearing?
You would, yeah. I'm saying that you're entitled to a fair hearing, and you're entitled to a right of appeal.
He got a fair hearing, didn't he? Why was it not a fair hearing?
Kay, what I'm trying to say is that he did not have a right of appeal. You accept that, and that's what
I don't accept that. No, I don't accept that at all. I'm challenging you on whether you're saying it was a fair hearing, not a fair hearing. You know, it was a hearing that went on for a significant amount of time. We know that it went on a little longer than potentially it might have been because of sad personal circumstances that Mr. Paterson had to deal with. But he was able to speak to the hearing. There was an opportunity for written testimony from all sorts of witnesses. All of that was taken into account. And then the independent committee decided that, on balance, he'd taken money that he shouldn't have taken, or certainly shouldn't have been campaigning for those businesses, given that he had taken money. And as a result, he needed to be suspended for 30 days. 90 minutes before that, the government decided that they're going to change the rules so that he doesn't have to be. Those are the headlines.
So, as I've said repeatedly on this programme, he did not have a right of appeal. And you've accepted that. And that's what the critical point is. And that's why the vote happened yesterday and it was passed.
And you're completely comfortable with that decision this morning, Minister? You're completely comfortable with that?
I'm comfortable with the vote in the House of Commons, because that's how parliamentary democracy works.
OK. I think you might be asked this a few times this morning, so I better let you go. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on the programme this morning. We'll be talking about that in more detail, I'm sure, with Labour at the top of the next hour. But for now, let's return to coal. Sky News correspondents Katerina Vitozzi in Kolkata in India and Siobhan Robbins in Muswell Brook in Australia. Ladies, good morning. Good morning. Sorry to have kept you. Thank you for bearing with us. Where should we go first? Let's go to Australia first, should we, with Siobhan. Good morning, Siobhan. So we've got a new agreement in place, but Australia, of course, one of the biggest contributors as far as coal is concerned in the whole world.
And there's absolutely no suggestion from people here that they will be doing anything to reduce coal production. I'm in New South Wales. I'm actually in coal country here. The hills behind me are dotted with mines. You can see a massive coal-fired power station behind me as well. But people here are really sceptical about the COP announcement today. They're saying in this area alone, in the Hunter Valley, around 100,000 people get money from coal directly or indirectly. And they believe that if the tap is simply turned off, where will the money come from? They want a much clearer plan about how people would move over from coal. They're also saying, essentially, if there is a demand for coal, then Australia will produce it. They will sell it. They are one of the biggest exporters of coal in the world. But this will come as a massive concern to climate campaigners around the world that Australia hasn't stepped up. It hasn't joined this coal pledge. It hasn't joined the methane pledge. It hasn't set any clearer, harder targets for emissions in 2030. And given the level of climate crisis that the world is facing, many will be thinking, is Australia really taking this seriously?
OK, and let's bring in Katerina as well, who is in India. Of course, they need coal to keep the lights on in India. Katerina.
Yeah, they do. More than 60% of India's electricity generation comes from coal. And really, it's been the elephant in the room, hasn't it, throughout COP26. You had the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Monday being embraced and congratulated by world leaders for upping their 2030 short-term targets, for setting a date for net zero 2070, far in the future than perhaps they would have liked. But still, coal, the elephant in the room, the word not mentioned by the Indian Prime Minister. And really that's because it is such a huge undertaking for a transition away from coal for this country. As I said, such a huge bulk of its power comes from coal use. It's the world's second biggest importer of coal. Similar to Siobhan saying, in India there are hundreds of thousands of jobs that depend on coal, both directly and indirectly as well. So it's a mammoth task to try and start that phase out. about. Really, what is going to be what drives it, if there are any commitments on it, is India's own desire to try and reduce its reliance on imported fossil fuels. The price of those we've seen in the past few months considerably higher than they were last year and the year before. So India will be conscious of that. In the short term, we understand there will be an increase actually in the domestic production of coal, but that reliance on the foreign imports is something that will be the driver rather than a wish to please an international audience with targets.
Let's leave it there. Thanks very much for the update. Thanks a lot. Still to come on the programme for you, could more extreme weather be used to power Britain in the fight against climate change? That's the suggestion from environmentalist Chris Packham, who joins us at 7:30, live with one couple heading to Australia as they prepare to see their family for the first time in nearly 2 years as COVID travel restrictions begin to ease. And can Labour derail the government's plan to overrule the parliamentary disciplinary process? Shadow Women's Minister Annalise Dodds joins us just after 8 o'clock. So can the coal agreement stand a chance of being successful without China on board? Our Asia correspondent Tom Cheshire reports.
Welcome to China's coal country. The impact of all this isn't just being felt here, but by the planet itself. Coal is the dirtiest fossil fuel around, and China burns more of it than the rest of the world combined. And it's speeding up. We've taken a road trip to Shanxi province, North China, to understand it better. It's a place where almost everything is caked in grime and soot, but it's the scale that's astonishing. We visit 3 coal power plants within a few hours' drive of each other. They're under construction or adding extra power, and between them alone represent more coal power than the entire UK output. And what's more, they nearly weren't built. They were all halted a few years ago under a national directive to restrict coal power, only to resume construction.
What this is zombie coal power, killed off back in 2017, but now being brought stumbling back to life, ready to spew harmful gases into the air. And China can't or won't kill it off for good.
Ningwu town is attached to one of the mines and heavily reliant on the industry. People are too busy trying to survive the coming winter to even know about COP26.
I'm waiting here by a school because more people pass by. My whole family sells coal, my son, my daughter and I. We've sold coal our whole lives.
Fan Lao Se buys coal from nearby mines, then drives into town to sell it from the back of his van to people here to burn for heat. Because of shortages and coal being diverted to heavy industry, mines have less to spare. Sometimes he now has to wait 2 days at a mine to fill up his van. We asked him what he thought of China's climate emission targets and COP26.
I don't know, I'm busy every day. I earn my living by working outside all day long.
Even Chinese climate experts don't believe it's practical for the country to cut its coal dependence in the short term.
你现在煤炭用的多少，你从明年就开始减，这样的话它不符合逻辑。所以说我们企业的这个目标，我感觉就是合乎逻辑的一个目标，而不是说为了气候变化我们把就是大家的挨冻挨饿，这样是不符合逻辑、不合常理的。
This isn't about the gap between pledges and reality, between high-level international summits and the truth on the ground. This is the pledge, the one China has made officially, to build more and more coal power for the next 4 years and then reduce it only gradually. They've not said how they will do that or how long it will take. And in that uncertainty, that hesitation, hangs the future of our climate. Tom Cheshire, Sky News, Shanxi, China.
For uninterrupted coverage of the summit, including special guests and analysis, you can watch Sky News Climate live on channel 525 from 10 a.m. Also making the news for you this morning. Police in Australia say they believe a man suspected of abducting 4-year-old Cleo Smith acted alone. She was found in a house in Western Australia more than 2 weeks after she disappeared. A 36-year-old man is being questioned by detectives.
As you're aware, there's a man in custody who may well be before the court very shortly. But we've seen the physical condition, we can say. So well, she's been checked out at the hospital and physically she's okay. No, I can confirm that. That's what we will allege that has taken place, that he acted solely alone.
Well, police have released a short audio recording of the moment Cleo was found.
I got her. I've got her. Hey, Bobby.
Bring the camera in.
Hey, Bobby, come here. Come here. I've got you, Bobby.
What's your name?
You're all right.
What's your name? What's your name, sweetheart?
My name is Cleo.
Your name is
You're all right,
Cleo.
Bobby.
Hello, Cleo.
Oh my goodness, that's very dramatic, isn't it? Now, scientists are warning that COVID rates in England are now at some of the highest levels ever seen. They say infections are increasing fastest among young children and also teenagers. The very latest figures show the UK has recorded 41,299 new COVID infections in the last day. There have been a further 217 deaths. That brings the total number of deaths reported within 28 days of a positive test to 140,964. Well, let's speak to our reporter, Shamam Freeman-Powell, who's going to update us on that for us. Hello to you. Good morning. Good morning. So figures are going up.
Good morning, Kay. And yes, they are. So this data has been done by REACT, which is a community testing programme which really focuses on home testing to get a better understanding of how the pandemic is progressing. Now, it says that October recorded the highest figures since May 2020, and that's when they first started collecting this data. But it is important to mention, though, that they didn't collect any data for December. And if we cast our minds back, December was the time that we all had to reconsider our Christmas plans because the rate of infection was so high. So it can't be said that these figures beat that record, but it certainly can be said that they are some of the highest figures that we've seen so far. Now, REACT says that this has been driven by infection rates in younger people between the ages of 5 and 12 and 13 to 17, and say that rates got particularly high before the half term but did slow down after those school holidays. So there is some suggestion now that the rates are going up. However, there is a lot of push and emphasis on these booster vaccinations, as this seems to be the government's main way out. It's also very important to note that hospitalisations and deaths are slower than some of the other peaks, but these figures do suggest that the pandemic is not over just yet.
OK, thank you. Could more extreme weather be used to power Britain in the fight against climate change? Environmentalist Chris Packham has the details. We'll talk to him next. Hello again. The Business Secretary says the decision to overturn disciplinary findings against a senior Conservative MP was simply about reforming parliamentary procedure to give him a right of appeal. Owen Paterson was found to have misused his position to benefit two companies he worked for. Kwasi Kwarteng told me the vote had nothing to do with Mr Paterson's guilt or innocence.
It's not about the rights and wrongs of what Owen Paterson said or did or how he was paid. I think the process is something that we want to look at. The fact is he had no right of appeal, and we feel that in terms of Parliament, people should have a right of appeal, as they do in most employments throughout this country. So as far as I know, because I've been here all week, as you appreciate, but as far as I know, and I've read the issue about the issue and been told about it, the vote yesterday was all about, getting a proper process and getting some sort of right of appeal that MPs of all parties can rely on.
Well, Owen Paterson was found to have breached the rules following an investigation by the Parliamentary Standards Commissioner. That's Catherine Stone. Mr Kwarteng seemed to suggest that Ms Stone should now consider her position.
I think it's difficult to see what the future of the Commissioner is, given the fact that we're reviewing the process and we're overturning and trying to reform this whole process. But it's up to the Commissioner to decide her position.
So you think she should resign?
All I've said is that we're trying to reform the process, and I think that's what I'm very focused on as a parliamentarian.
You think she should review her position, I think is what you said.
It's up to her to do that. I mean, it's up to anyone where they've made a judgment and people have sought to change that, to consider their position. That's a natural thing, but I'm not saying she should resign.
Tamara's here. Oh my goodness, that was squeaky bum time, wasn't it?
Yes, Kwasi Kwarteng drew the short straw this morning, having to defend this system, which many Tory MPs feel is indefensible. As you were putting to him, dozens of Tory MPs refused to vote for it, and some of them outright voted against it, with Tory MPs calling it a dark day for democracy and a colossal misjudgment. Kwasi Kwarteng and the government's defence of changing the entire system on the day that one of their own was supposed to be suspended is that it would create a new system with the right of appeal and the right to call witnesses. Now, members of the committee which looked at the Owen Paterson case say that he was given masses of time to put his case to them through lawyers, and they communicated with him back and forth. So he was able to put his case, and he was able to put it to Parliament and into the media as well. You could also say that what was set up yesterday in this, of course, this 90-minute debate, this huge change that came in, was a new committee with a Conservative majority. Although they talked about the right of appeal, they certainly didn't set up a new system with that in it. There was no real discussion of how it would work. So all that is TBC, really, and that's why Labour today really going on the attack, saying they're saying this is corruption, this is rigging the system. The question for Labour, though, now is they say they won't cooperate with it. They're going to boycott this new system. But traditionally, these standard systems have been set up cross-party. The system we've got now was set up after the Cash for Questions scandal in 1995. So if Labour won't cooperate with it, what is the future of this new system, given that the independent standards commissioner who looked into the case, Catherine Stone, has said that she's not resigning, she's staying in her post, even though I thought it was notable that Kwasi Kwarteng said it was difficult to see what future she had.
He also said it didn't actually matter that Owen Paterson had broken the rules and taken £500,000.
Well, what the government's position is that this is not about the rights and wrongs of the Owen Paterson case. This is about setting up a new committee to look at it. And in theory,
that it was on the same day.
Yes, exactly. That's the difficulty. But in theory, this committee, with a Tory majority, could look at it and find that he did break the rules and give him the same sanction. So they're not taking a judgment on that. Of course, even Owen Paterson's friends who defend him, like Sir Bernard Jenkin, for example, a Tory MP who was on the Standards Committee but sat out this inquiry because of their friendship, said it looks terrible to be doing it on the same day. If you want to overhaul the standard system, do this case first and then look at it later. But Boris Johnson went ahead with it, and he has a big majority, and he perhaps calculated that he could get it through and people would not be that bothered because the public might be more concerned about what's going on in their own lives. But certainly the strength of the reaction, I think, may have surprised some in government.
Well, let's see what happens next. For now, Tamara, thank you. Could the great British weather help fight climate change? We love to moan about how sunny and windy it gets, but now environmentalists say those very things could provide our much-needed clean energy going forward. How? Let's find out with the broadcaster and environmental campaigner Chris Packham, who's joining us. Hi, Chris. Thanks for joining us on the programme this morning. We've seen wind turbines, we've seen wind farms a lot here in the United Kingdom, but actually the power that they are supplying is increasing all the time now, isn't it? It's not just, oh, look, there's a wind farm.
No, the power is increasing that they supply, largely down to their rollout and also improvements in technology. I think we have to recognise that wind turbines and solar panels have moved on tremendously in the time that we've become aware of their existence, and that technology is making them more affordable and delivering more energy more quickly. The thing is, we've got to get that energy from those often remote locations. Wind farms are up here in Scotland. Most of them are up on the peatlands of Scotland. Solar farms are most productive in the West Country, where it is sunniest, of course, for most of the time. We've got to get that energy through our grid and into our homes, and therefore what we need to exercise these renewables, make them more worthwhile, is a smarter, more flexible energy system. So Smart Energy GB are rolling out their smart meters and trying to get them into as many homes as possible. 24 million are already out there, not just about improving the way that we use energy in the home, but feedbacking information about that energy, when it's used, how it's used, so that we can better distribute it and improve efficiency, and therefore make sure that we can cut back on our dependence on fossil fuels, coal and gas energy.
And also storing that energy once it's been created, because, of course, it's not windy all the time.
It isn't windy. Well, it's not windy all the time in all places, but being on the edge of the continent as we are, as you pointed out at the outset, we are in one of the best places to harness that sort of energy. And I think you'd always find someone in the UK perhaps complaining about the level of wind or sun or whatever it happens to be. But you're right, it's about making sure that we have a network of these abilities to generate these renewable energies in the right places and distribute that energy. As battery technology improves, and again that technology is improving apace, then we would need to be storing that energy. I think that in that instance we're looking at a lot more local storage. It could be at some stage in the future, if we can improve those batteries, that could be done even at a domestic or local community level. But at this point in time, we've got to use the infrastructure that we've got, and we've got to improve it, and it needs to be smarter. We are effectively wasting fossil fuel energy by letting it get clogged up and distributed inefficiently, and that's why we need these better systems of technology to create, as I said, that smart, flexible, modern energy distribution system.
Tell me about your movie or film, The Weather Energy Report.
Weather Energy Report was commissioned with Cambridge University. I think we need to know what the public want from their energy. The heartening thing was that a significant percentage of people questioned at the outset said that they were worried about climate change. Sometimes campaigners such as myself think that it's just us, it's just we're in a bit of a bubble. But it's good to see that 76% of the public say they do have concerns about the impact of this on their lives. Therefore, they will be aligned with us in trying to seek improvements. No question there, but equally unsurprising given the current crises that we've seen running into this autumn and winter. Nearly 90% of people are worried about prices of energy too. So we've got to make sure that we can generate affordable energy, get it into people's homes, and at the same time address these colossal issues which we are confronting. We've heard this morning that nations are saying that they want to give up on coal. We will have to move through a transition. That's not something that's going to happen overnight. And as we move hopefully as rapidly through that transition as possible, we need to bring these other forms of energy generation online and make sure that they're serving people, keeping prices down, and that they offer a secure energy system for the UK.
Chris, just before I let you go, you were recently a victim of an awful arson attack at your home. You're not going to allow that to stop you campaigning, are you?
I'm not, no. I suppose it's like terrorism, Kay. We can't, any of us, give in to it. It's a blight upon our lives, and we have to find the energy, the determination and the ambition to rise above it and carry on. At this point in time, the things I think I'm campaigning about that might have elicited this attack, I still believe to be true and right, and therefore I will continue to pursue them with as much gusto as I possibly can.
Good of you to take the time to speak to us this morning, Chris. Thank you.
Pleasure, Kay. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, despite the rising gas prices, there's one part of the UK which has more energy than it needs. Orkney has more than 650 wind turbines and thousands of solar panels, generating 130% of the electricity needed, as our science correspondent Thomas Moore now reports.
At the tip of Scotland, there is a treasure island where renewable energy is the new gold.
Very traditional sort of one room, that's it really.
Adrian Bird has lived on Chappensay for 15 years. He took us in one of the island's electric vans to the wind turbine that's owned by the community and generates up to £5,000 a day, money that funds a bus, an out-of-hours ferry and affordable housing.
This is our turbine, so we're doing something positive for the community, but we're also taking advantage of clean, renewable electricity to do that.
There are more than 600 turbines on Orkney capitalising on the abundant wind, producing far more electricity than the islands need. But the power cable back to the mainland gets overloaded, and the energy companies can throttle back the energy they generate.
They're going to put the brakes on now, so you can see they've slowed us right down.
That must be hugely frustrating, because that's lost money.
It is. It's a huge loss of money. It will take a while for the turbine to get back up and running properly again. This can happen 100 times a day.
But now Chappensay is turning the excess power into hydrogen. Energy once wasted is in effect stored as a gas to use later. This is the island school, and for decades it's been heated by oil that was burnt in 3 boilers in here. And of course that oil came from a long way away and resulted in large amounts of emissions. Now it's got 6 hydrogen boilers, the hydrogen made up at the wind turbine. It's local energy, and the only byproduct is water. Adele is the climate change officer for Orkney Council. She says the islands show the rest of the UK how to live without electricity generated by fossil fuels.
We've got hundreds of households with wind turbines. We've got hundreds of households now using electric vehicles. We generate more than 100% of our own need of electricity from renewables. So there hasn't been, a lifestyle change for us.
40 minutes off the coast, they're experimenting with a so far untapped source of energy, the tide. The Orbital O2 is the most powerful turbine of its kind, with rotors that spin in the water rushing between the Atlantic and North Sea. Scaled up, turbines like this could supply more than 10% of the UK's electricity, with the same guaranteed output as gas or coal.
The tides are very, very predictable. We can look into the future and tell you at any time when the tides are going to be doing. So we're able to know how much power and when that power is going to be coming into the UK grid.
To keep the lights on in a net zero world, we will need a mix of renewable sources of energy. But Orkney shows the way, and it works. Thomas Moore, Sky News in Kirkwall.
More from COP26 coming up very shortly indeed. But first, thousands of people with relatives in Australia are now able to see their families for the first time in nearly 2 years. Many are heading down under this morning for what will be an emotional reunion. Amongst them are Yvonne and Kevin King, leaving from Heathrow to see their daughter and grandson. Hello to you both.
Hello there.
Hi. How lovely to see you. Now, when have you actually seen your grandson in person yet?
No. He was born October 20 during lockdown. Had his first birthday last week. We've missed it all.
Oh, so what's the plan? What's the first thing you're going to do when you get there, Yvonne?
Cover my daughter, cover my grandson, cover my son-in-law. So it's just, we've had lots of interaction. So we really feel that we know him because we've been doing lots of sort of like FaceTimes and lots of photos and videos and all those sorts of things. But actually to get to see him and to be there and play with him and, do everything, it's going to be amazing. We've waited so long. We get booking flights and cancelling and things like that. So, we've waited a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. Kevin, with successive lockdowns that Australia has had, just looking at the baby there as we're talking to you, you must have thought this day would never come.
Well, I'm the pessimist in the family, and I didn't think it was going to be until something like April next year. So everything's changed in the last 2 or 3 weeks. With opening up Sydney, no quarantine, and the change on the 1st of November with the exception process. So it's been a bonanza. We missed a lot, but we'll get Christmas with him. So that makes up for it, I think.
Lovely. You mentioned Christmas there, Kevin. Yvonne, how long are you planning to stay?
We're staying through until December the 27th. Returning then because it's my sister's wedding on the 29th. Just trying to fit
And Kevin, before I let you go, how are you feeling about the flight? It's a long way, isn't it?
Well, we've done Australia a number of times, but we've never done the 17 hours direct to Australia one. So that'll be a new experience, but we'll get through it because there's a good reward at the end.
OK, top tips, drink lots and lots of water, get up and walk around as often as you can and have a fantastic time when you get there. Enjoy Christmas with your new grandson and hopefully we'll see you when you get back. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Safe flight. Thank you. Safe flight. So the world is opening up again. Coming up in the 9 o'clock hour, we're going to be speaking to Claire Owen, who is the travel editor at the Daily Telegraph. She's just back from Bermuda. Get her, fancy pants. Also, from next week, I think, we can fly to New York for the first time in many, many, many months, talking about that as well. Also, how ethical business advisors have been virtually cycling to Glasgow for COP26. Latest on that coming up.
moving this way. Clearly not had very much to eat at all. A lot of them extremely thin and very frail.
The people here are praying quietly to themselves.
I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
Now they're trying to finish the job off so that they can move into the square.
Okay, it's okay, don't worry, it's okay.
They're becoming very sensitive about having the media around.
They have no protective masks or protective equipment at all.
We aim to be the best and the most trusted place in news.
Every time they touch them, they spray. This is the cocktail of drugs which the doctors at this hospital have been giving their coronavirus patients. Made for people who want clarity in an uncertain world.
Perilously close to the vineyards.
I can't imagine
how much plastic
is lying at the bottom of this huge lake.
Did you know that if we make small changes to our lives, we can reduce air pollution by loads? But how much? Exactly, loads.
There'll be a mostly dry and quite sunny morning, but eastern and western coastal counties can expect showers. They will become largely confined to Western Wales, Cornwall and Norfolk by midday. It will stay rather chilly with a raw wind in the east. Wales will see showers mostly dying out during the afternoon. There'll be little change elsewhere, but the far north will turn damp later on. Clean North Atlantic air means air pollution levels will remain low, with values between 1 and 3 on the daily air quality index.
The Air Quality Report, sponsored by Philips Air Purifiers.
Protesters have been, and campaigners I should say, have been cycling, walking and marching to Glasgow to make their voices heard in the climate change debate. One firm decided to take on the challenge and then turn it into a company health initiative. With us to talk about it in more detail, Matt Rooney from the Anthesis Group, who took on the challenge to ride to COP. Hi, thanks for joining us on the programme this morning. Tell us about your colleagues' cycle to Glasgow and why they did it.
Yeah, sure. Good morning to you, Kay. Yeah, so a number of my colleagues, they rode from various offices all over the country, so London, Bristol, Oxford, Manchester, with part of the Ride to Change group, so about 170 or so other individuals all hopped on their bikes, made it through some of the really challenging weather, obviously very fitting given the purpose they were going for, and made it all the way up to Glasgow. But as you say, it was part of a wider initiative that Anthesis were running to promote better physical and mental well-being. So some of our colleagues in other offices around the world could also join in, and they were trying to hit the combined distance of all of our offices going to COP, which is about 65,000 kilometres, which I believe we just about hit. So yeah, hats off to colleagues who definitely deserve a bit more credit than me for their pains there.
Tell me about the Anthesis Group. What do you do?
Sure. So yeah, Anthesis, we're a sustainability activator, which means that we're really looking to drive and enable and activate real impact with a lot of organisations that we work with on the topic of sustainability and climate change. So we're the largest group of dedicated professionals. We work with about 25% of the FTSE 100, along with SMEs and different layers of government. And again, it's all about the impact. So really to illustrate that point, we recently set a target to try and help our clients remove and reduce their carbon footprints by 3 gigatons, which is a pretty sizable number. It's roughly about half of the US's annual emissions, or 8 times the UK's emissions. And also we have recently become a certified B Corp, which is not something you do lightly. We're legally obligated to hit the highest possible standards of social, environmental performance, to really make sure that we're practicing what we preach.
And in addition to all of that, your clients include 25% of the FTSE 100 index, huge companies. Are they doing their fair share to start to combat climate change?
Yeah, certainly a mixed bag. We're still seeing, different levels of maturity with clients. Certainly some leaders in there, but I mean, the proof is really in the pudding, as you'll see from a lot of the stats that have been published over recent weeks. There's certainly a lot more that companies can be doing.
What are you hoping for from COP? What do you want to see?
Sure. So I think it takes a couple of forms, really. I mean, I think definitely no getting away from. I think the stick of policy and keeping that ambition high, keeping the pressure on other countries that aren't necessarily setting the right targets. If you're not setting the right targets, you're onto a bit of a non-starter there. So I think policy has a big role to play. I think we've seen a real boom in demand from the finance sector and the investment sector. So another type of stick, but not necessarily coming from policy, coming from folks that hold the purse strings and that can say to their companies, we want you to tell us how you're doing. We want you to tell us where the risks are, and we want you to really demonstrate your performance improvement. So I think that side of it, we're looking for some real sort of progress there, and starting to see some good announcements yesterday with better reporting and disclosures required. But then I think on the incentive side, what incentives can business see? And I think that for me comes down to really helping make it easy for businesses to get on that journey to avoid, reduce, remove emissions. And it can feel, I'm sure, quite overwhelming for many that are just sort of new to this. So I think being able to show the real value that this has, and actually it's in a lot of businesses' commercial interest to do this and do this soon.
Okay, Matt. Sadly, we're out of time, Matt, but it's great to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed for taking the time to join us on the programme this morning. Much appreciated. Thank you. Coming up in the next hour, the government. What have they been up to this time?